Hi, this is Chris Hickman from DecisionFirst. I wanted to shoot this quick video to show you how we can use the power of BI services within the Webby Rich Client tool to bring data into the Excelsius dashboard. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to load up the Webby Rich Client, and I'm going to create a new Webby report based on the eFashion universe. So I'm going to log into my CMS here as an administrator. And I'm going to select a recently used universe. So I'm going to use this eFashion universe. So I'll wait for Webby to load up here. And then inside of my universe here, I'll go over to store. I'll pull out store name, city, state, and I'll also go into my measures and I'll pull out sales revenue. And I'm going to click run query here, and I'm going to return the report that shows me just my store name, city, state, and sales revenue. So what I want to do is I want to expose this block as a web service that I can consume inside of Excelsius. So the first thing that I need to do here is save this report. I'm going to save this report just here in my user docs, and I'll call this eFashion sales revenue and click save. And so I'm going to export this up to the CMS, and I'll drop this into this Wellesley folder, export it up. Alright, now we've exported, and now I'm going to click close. So as of Service Pack 3 for BusinessObjects 3.1, Webby Rich Client now has integrated the Show BI Services checkbox. If we click this checkbox, we see a listing of BI services that are available on the server to be consumed, not only by Excelsius, but by any application that can consume a web service. So we can go into any of these services and find the URL that we can use to drop into Excelsius, for instance, and have it contact that URL to pull out the data that we require. So in order to publish a web service, I'm going to right click on the edge of this block and pick Publish Block. So when I pick Publish Block, it's going to fire up a wizard that's going to allow me to publish this web service, or publish this data block as a web service. So we'll give the wizard just a moment to come up, and it will take us through and ask us which one of these web services. We could create a new web service if we wanted to. So now we have our publish web intelligence content block up. Let's click next. And it's asking us, what do we want to call this block? So I'm going to call this block eFashion sales revenue. And this eFashion sales revenue, this name can be anything we want it to be. And just in this case, we're calling it the same name as the file name of the web intelligence document. I'm going to click next. And it's asking us, where do we want to save the web service? Well, I can create a brand new web service here. So if I create a new web service, I just give it a name, and we'll call this eFashion sales data. And authentication type, we'll give it enterprise and click OK. So it's going to create a brand new web service for us. So now I can select this new web service and pick finish. And it's going to publish that block as a consumable web service on that server. So we'll let it publish. And then once it publishes, we can go over to the web service publisher and select our host server, and then navigate down and find our eFashion sales data web service, and we can grab its URL, and then inside of that we can see the service that it exposes. So we can grab that URL and we can take it over into Excelsius, and then we can set up our data connection to pull that data in. So now you can see here that we have eFashion sales data, and if I pull up the properties on that eFashion sales data object, we've got a WSDL URL here, and I can go inside and select that WSDL URL and hit Control C on my keyboard to copy that URL. Now I can minimize Webby because our web service has been published. So now this block is exposed out on in this case on our intranet to be consumed inside of an application. So I'm going to minimize Rich Client, and I'm going to go into Excelsius, and we'll just launch Excelsius, and we'll keep this very simple. All I want to do is go into my data connections. So I'll go into data and connections. I'm going to click add queries a web service in this case. So we'll give it a name here, eFashion sales revenue. And now we have a WSDL URL. I'm going to drop in my WSDL URL that I copied from BI Services. And I'm going to click Import. And now it's contacting that URL, and it's pulling back the methods that we have available to us. And whenever we publish a standard queries a web service, we have a drill and we have a get report block. And just to pull the data back, I'm going to select get report block. And now it's given us a pre-formatted web service URL that it dropped in there for us. And now we have two sections here. We have get input values, and we have we have input values and we have output values. So the input values, if we decided to secure this web service, we could pass in a user ID and password, or just leave it blank and have it grab the credentials of the current user that's logged into InfoView. We also have a series of filters here that we could use to filter data in memory. So we could pass in a specific state, and then it would filter that data based on the state that we pass in. But we're going to keep this simple. So we're going to leave login password, the login and the password blank. We're going to leave all of our filters blank here. We're going to go over to our output values, and we're going to select row. Now we need to tell it, we need to tell the web service what columns, what cells we want it to insert the data into. So we know that from our web service block, we've got 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and well, let's click OK here. So we've got 4 columns, and now let's just account for, say, 20 rows of data, because we know that our sales revenue, since we're reporting by store, is not going to have, we're not going to have any more than 20 stores. So let's click OK here. Alright, so we've set up our table to output the row data. We could also set up a range of cells to output the headers and footers from a report. We could also output some other information like the user that's contacting the web service, or any of these other properties, like last time the data was refreshed, the creation date, whether it's scheduled or not, and so forth. So we could use any of these and just bind these out to a cell and then use those in our spreadsheet or in our dashboard. And then we'll go over to usage, and so our usage is just, it's pretty standard. So we can click refresh before components are loaded, so that it'll refresh the web service before the components are loaded. We could also set it to refresh every 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, or we could change this number to make it any range of seconds, minutes, or hours. We could also set trigger cells. So we could set a cell that is bound to another Excelsius object. So if we have a push button that changes the value of a cell, we could say when that trigger cell changes or when it becomes a certain value, we could fire off that web service to run. And then down here at the bottom we have loading status. So we could set loading message, idle message, and then enable cursor and disable mouse input on load. So we can control our dashboard whenever the data loads. I normally like to put enable load cursor at the very minimum, so that our cursor turns from an arrow into an hourglass. And so I'll leave refresh before components are loaded and enable load cursor and click close. So now, as a best practice, one thing I like to do whenever I have a blank range of cells like this that are going to accept data is I like to color code the back. I like to color code the cells so that it would so that I'll know as a visual clue that I shouldn't put anything in that range of cells, that I'm expecting something else to drop in there. So one more thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to go over to my selectors, and I'm going to do a spreadsheet table. I'm going to drop in that spreadsheet table, and I'm going to bind that spreadsheet table over to that range of cells. So I'm going to make sure that all of my settings are correct here. So let's go into display data, and let's select that range of cells. And then we'll let it bind to that range of 4 columns and 20 rows, and you can see here that it's picked up the background color of that range of cells. So, and that's okay for right now. We'll just leave it the way that it is, and so that I can show you whenever we click preview that it's going to load up that data into that range of cells and show it in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to click fit canvas to component so that I can bring the canvas down in size and then expand it out just a little bit to give ourselves a little margin, and click preview. And so what's happening is this dashboard is loading, And now it's asking me to log into the system. So it's asking me first off for a system name. I'll give it demo.decisionfirst.com, and then it's asking for a username and then a password, and I'll click OK. And it's trying to pull that data back from that web service now and populate that range of cells in the spreadsheet. So we'll give it a moment to let it contact that web service. And now it appears that we've got one column of data here without any of the other columns. So let's go back and have a look at our data. Go back to our data connections here. And right here in our row, normally we put the data in here, but let's try cell instead of row. So if we change row to cell, or we remove the selection for cell, we remove the selection for row, and then we drop in the selection for cell into the same range of cells here. So let's give ourselves a little bit of space in this dashboard so that we can see our login screen. So it remembered our last input there, so let's try this out. Alright, so now you can see that it's put everything in there. So now we've got e-fashion, we have the city, the state, and the total sales revenue here. So you can see now that it's loaded up that data from the web service and dropped it into our range of cells. So then we could go back into our spreadsheet. We could change the appearance so that the background doesn't look so bright. We could add in more cells here. Another visual clue that I'd like to give myself is I like to go over here and grab this range of cells while I'm working on my in my design phase and paste this in. So now you can see that I've got a range of cells here, and I can resize all of my cells so that it'll pick up that data. And now I like the way that that looks. And now I can go back over to my spreadsheet cells, and I can reset this so that my spreadsheet widens out a bit on my dashboard, so that we allow ourselves enough space to see all of the data. Okay, and then another thing that I like to do is here in for our spreadsheet component, I'll go into behavior and common, and I'll say ignore blank cells and rows. That way it'll truncate the bottom of the range of cells if there's no data in it. So either we can leave that range of cells so that you can see what the data looks like, or we can just go on and take it out of here and then preview the database or preview the dashboard again. And it's going to ask me to log in. And when I log in there, it's going to go out to that web service again and pull the data. Now it's starting to look a little bit better. So we could add a little bit of formatting here to the sales revenue. We could drop in some headers, and we could make this look a lot better, more like a regular dashboard. But that's a quick demonstration on how we can pull in data using a query as a web service. So if you need to contact me, feel free to contact me at my DecisionFirst email address, and I'll just type it in right here into our spreadsheet dashboard at DecisionFirst.com. You can also contact me on Twitter, and my Twitter address is chickman, HICKMAN 72. So feel free to contact me at my email address, chris.hickman@decisionfirst.com, or my Twitter account at chickman72. Thank you very much.